Yeah, I mean, and I can like listen to bands. I grew up in like playing in punk bands and like being in the punk scene and like all that kind of stuff. But like my daily listening habit is like very not that like centered in that anymore. You know what I mean? But I think it helps me like bring like a new perspective to like that world that is like drums, like guitar left, guitar right, bass. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, that's boring. Like, how can we spice this up a little bit?
Hey, Scott, welcome to the Question and the Answers podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, it's so great to actually have a chance to talk with you. It's been a while since I've seen you. I think the last time I saw you was at a show, was it not?
I was at the White Reaper show.
That's right. Yeah, the White Reaper show in Berkeley. That was a badass show.
Yeah, that was a sick show.
Yeah, like it's so funny. Like I was talking to another guest about that band and that show and how when I went to that show, I had only kind of very briefly heard even about the band and had heard all this hype. So I was like, you know what? They're in town. I'm just going to go, you know? And
Yeah.
it was, I think, what was it like? It was like a Thursday night or something like that, if I remember correctly. I think, wasn't it a weeknight?
Yeah, it was. It
Yeah.
was a weeknight and it was packed.
Yeah. And it was super packed. And I was totally blown away. They were top notch, dude. Like if you haven't heard of White Reaper, absolutely go check that band out. They're great.
That band seemed to go from like a band, like a band that we would all see at like the Parkside or something to like some crazy large band that it seemed like they got like a really cool manager or something overnight. And then they did some cool stuff or something. I don't know, you know?
Well, yeah, I don't know if you know my friend Kenny Kaiser. He's a sound guy who works with the Killers.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
He does like their front of house. And he and I were kind of briefly talking about them, about how they had gone on and done like a run of shows with them and how they were super professional, like super tight, like they ran like a well-oiled machine. So I don't know. I think that just kind of speaks to what you're talking about, where they just kind of put everything in place to get to that level. So it's great, you know, to see a band do that.
Yeah, it's really cool. I know they like right before quarantine, they had that Pearl Jam tour, which is crazy. I don't know if you've ever, if you fuck with Pearl Jam or not.
I mean, shoot, dude. I don't know. Yeah. Like the next point is to just be Pearl Jam, you know, I think at that point, but.
Have you seen the Pearl Jam documentary?
No, the PJ-20.
I'm like a pretty big like documentary person. And like,
same here.
Even if you don't love that band, that documentary will make you go like, damn, like I fuck with Pearl Jam. Even if you like have never heard of Pearl Jam, it just makes you like love Pearl Jam, you know?
Yeah. Well, I actually really like Pearl Jam. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. I like that band.
Oh, you'll love it. It's like, I've never watched basketball, but I'm like a giant Michael Jordan fan now after watching that Last Dance documentary.
You know, I still haven't seen that, but no, it's good to know. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's good. Get you going.
Sweet. Well, anyway, hey, this is Scott Goodrich, who is a engineer and producer who works out of the East Bay area. He runs New Tone Studios, and I've had the pleasure of knowing Scott for a few years now. Haven't had the pleasure of working with you yet, but hopefully down the road. But you have worked with a few of the bands that I know and have worked with on Sell the Heart. So I wanted to have, you know, just a conversation about, you know, your role as an engineer and a producer, get some backstory about what it is that you've done over the years, and just kind of introduce people to who you are and what you do. But yeah, man, give me kind of a brief idea of, you know, where you're coming from as an engineer and producer, what you do, and, you know, what you're all about.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a crazy gig because I know it's so personalized, you know, like every person that records is a little different, even though maybe we all use the same gear or the same microphones or things like that. But like, we're all definitely different sets of personalities. So I think like over time, my vibe has kind of gone from just like I record bands, like it's cool, like whatever your band is, I'll record it, like let's do it. And more recently, even it kind of started when I was doing the Unconditional Arms record. I've just been like, I'd like to dive in a little bit more with the artist, and like my vibe is like let's create something rather than me just sort of sit back and capture a performance or something like that. I'm like, let's make something together, because I was sort of always like teetering in between that. Like some projects were that, and those were always like the projects where I was just recording bands kind of didn't turn out that great to me. And I don't even think they had a good time, because I was probably just bored. Like I was just sitting there like pressing record and being like, okay, cool, like cool, everyone's cool. And then the projects where I was like, give me the guitar, like let's try it like this, and then we'd go back and forth, and then we'd change tones, and we would do all kinds of crazy stuff. That's kind of where like I think I thrive. So that's kind of my vibe, is like creating a record with a band, or create a song, EP, whatever it is nowadays. I don't know how many people do records nowadays, but yeah, that's sort of my vibe, is like creating something special and like manipulating sound and making it kind of weird and cool and fun to listen to and entertaining. And I'm not necessarily there to like capture a performance. I'm just there to like make something cool and fun to listen to.
Yeah, because I think that's a very interesting point to really talk about, is that there are a lot of different variations of the type of person that does your type of work, right? Where you could have somebody like a Steve Albini, who is like on record kind of well known for being that guy that is really not there to produce or change or give you any kind of like real guidance as far as like your music. He's just there to capture the sound and try to, give you the best product based off of what you give him. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's like more people who I think are doing what you're talking about, which is, not just being somebody who literally says, okay, rolling, capture, quick mix, tell me what you want me to do, and then you just do it. You're wanting to be a little bit more immersive and with the experience of the actual music and the art itself.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting. Like, I've kind of felt like over time, it's not so much like kind of like a producer role was like helping bands write songs, and I think people are really precious to those nowadays. Like they spend so much time putting them together. So I don't even know if I comment on people's songwriting all that much unless they want me to, but it's more like enhancing parts, in ways that they didn't really expect to. Like I'm really big on like, I'll do like 3 different drum setups at the same time they're tracking drums. And then like while I'm mixing, I'll do like a 3 mic setup. And then like the chorus gets really big. It goes to like a 16 mic setup, but it's all in one pass. So I'm just sort of like manipulating their performance to be interesting the whole time, or, bunch of amps, like weird amps during the verse, and then like 8 amps during the chorus or something like that. But not necessarily like it's like a blended version of like, when you think of like Mutt Lange producing Def Leppard, it's not like that. We're like writing an album for 9 months, and recording for, it's not like Bob Rock or something like that, but it's just like playing around with tones and making things as interesting as we possibly can. Maybe like enhancing their songs in ways they didn't think about when they're just all like jamming in the practice space.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the pleasure of working with a few different engineers, and I wouldn't even go so far as to say producers, because I've just never really been in a band that's had the budget to really hire somebody to like fully produce a record, because there is a key difference. I mean, like, I think you've already kind of touched on it a little bit, but like one of the main differences obviously is that the engineer is the person who's kind of there, and their core role is just to literally be the one to handle the equipment and send the cues of we're rolling, and then they put levels together and maybe manipulate some sounds, and they're doing like some editing and that kind of thing. While as a producer is more somebody who traditionally would have the role of, okay, I'm actually going to work with you with parts and like molding the songs and putting part A and mixing it with part B, or like rearranging things and like kind of helping to manipulate the songs and the album on a much bigger scale. And then sometimes they take the role of the engineer as well, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
I just think it's like at this point in this time, like everyone, that role is just so blurred. I guess I would say, like, because everyone can kind of record themselves a little bit. So like demoitis starts like when you're writing the song, not even when you've demoed the song or played it all together. You know what I mean? So people are a little bit more precious about like the arrangement and things like that. So I'll obviously, I mean, if anyone's been in the studio with me, I have no problem speaking up, like regardless of hurting anyone's ego. But like I'm completely down to dismiss my idea at the second nobody likes it. So
Well, yeah, and I think that is a quality that I would say most good engineers and producers have, is that, you know, if you're willing to suggest something, and if the band or artist that you're working with is willing to at very least receive that idea, and if anything, give it a go, you know, like you give it a try, because hey, like we're in the studio, we can try it, and you might actually like what you hear, you know,
yeah,
then that can certainly like elevate the song or the performance or what you're capturing. But at the same time, if a band, you know, to your point of, man, like we're just ready to put this down the way that we want to do it. We already know exactly what we want it to sound like, and this is it. And your idea is fine, but we're not going to try it. Like, you know, and just you to be like, okay, that's fine. You know, walk away. You know, no
yeah,
one's ego has to get hurt. Now, I think that's a good quality without having to, like, you know, potentially step on anyone's toes, which I mean, having been in the studio and like run into that kind of stuff before, it's like, it can get really weird, you know, and it can get like tense, and nobody wants that.
totally. Yeah, and I think like it's kind of an odd badge, but like you earn people's trust based off of like things you've done in the past. So you get a little bit more like wiggle room to like throw out crazy stuff if you've done something that's worked before, as opposed to like, I've never met you before and you have no idea who I am, and you just found the studio on the internet, and I'm like, let's put this microphone in the bathroom and like sing upside down while you like, you know what I mean, like just make them do like crazy things. But yeah, like, yeah, I think you get a little bit more like say if you have some validation behind what you're talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, I can recall the first time I ever went into a recording studio was when I was in high school, and the band I was in, we won like this Battle of the Bands thing. So they gave us 2 days of recording at like this local recording studio, right? It was
Nice.
basically this guy's house, and he had, I want to say it was like a 12 channel mixer connected to, I, I, I think it was
Mac
actually just a,
one,
huh?
Mac one.
I don't even think it was was it a computer? Shoot, I don't even remember, man. To be perfectly, I, I don't even think it was digital at that point. I think it was really just a cassette tape, like analog mix thing that he had set up. It was like some sort of configuration. By the end of the day, we walked away with actually a cassette where he was able to mix it all down that way. I mean, it wasn't like a simple like 8-track thing or like 4-track, but it was a little bit more complex than that. But anyway, that was my first experience, and we had no idea what we were doing. Like absolutely no idea. We were just like, yeah, man, like you tell us what we need to do. And, you know, he fortunately was able to give us a pretty decent demo, which was nice. But even from that experience, moving to the next one, you learn something. And I think that, you know, it's, maybe it's a little bit different now because everyone who has like a MacBook has GarageBand, and anyone that has just even a little bit of computer savvy can dive in there and they can record stuff pretty much right away.
Yeah,
And, you know,
those
if
are
you,
like can be keeper takes basically.
exactly. And I think that nowadays, by the time that you've gotten to a position where you're going into a studio for the first time, especially if you spent any time with something like GarageBand or Logic, you probably already do know a little bit more about what that process might look like, or like what getting different sounds looks like. But I mean, I guess the question that I would have for you is, you know, what is one of the main benefits still for a band or an artist to go and seek you out to record with you in your studio versus just trying to do it all by themselves, at home and just spending time learning how to do it? Like, what would it be like right away, like the main benefits?
My like elevator pitch to that would be, you're just paying for someone's experience with it, so you don't have to worry about it. It's like you can do a lot of things yourself, but the time it will take you will be quadruple what it would take me, maybe. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's really, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I'm using the same things everyone else has the capability of using. We all have the same tools. Digital and analog are like a blurred line of personal preference at this point, rather than actual difference to some extent. The lines are like so different. No one's mom would really care whether it was a giant studio or your laptop. Like, it doesn't matter, as long as the song is amazing. That's all that matters. So it's kind of like this crazy thing of it's literally like someone's experience. You're paying for someone's like ears to join your project. The gear is cool. The gear is really fun, and like, we have fun gear, so it's cool to use it. It's been like, with COVID and things going on, I've been sort of like having to pull the mask off of like what is important. Like, for instance, a lot of people are like, how can I do guitars at my house? I'm like, you just get a DI box. Like, you're fine. Your interface is great. Like, I mean, like, I'm not there to, I think the biggest thing that maybe like me personally brings to the table would be like QA, like quality assurance to like performances, which I'm like very vocal about when like the relationship with the band is correct, so that's like a big thing, because you can record a guitar part a million times. Maybe the second take was the one, it's like that. Have you ever heard of the Quincy Jones Thriller story?
I'm not sure if I know which one you're talking about, but
they mixed like Thriller like 100 times, and he was like, just go with the second mix, and he didn't even listen to it. He's like, whatever, it's fine, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, okay. You could just pick it apart. You could pick it apart for days, and you could just keep redoing things, and maybe what you did the second time was fine, So
yeah, well, I think that's a really profound statement in that, if I were to take, a couple of $1,000s and upgrade all of my home equipment and get like basically a fully fleshed out home studio, like, in effect, I could do exactly what it is that you do. Right.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
You'd have all the tools,
Right. I'd certainly have all the tools, but in terms of like the know-how, the experience, and the speed, and I think speed is a huge part of it, because anyone that, is on a time crunch and has like what you call demoitis, already, and like you're ready to get it down there. And I think also a key element of that too is that between your equipment and speed, that can make a significant difference in terms of like the overall quality, because I may not have as good of an interface or like as good of a compressor or like as good of like a reverb unit or plugins as you have, which can make a significant difference in the way that something sounds. And you are someone who has spent like virtually your entire adult life and probably part of your adolescent life doing, to build up all of this knowledge. And so, yeah, I think that your value, as you just said, is absolutely like boils down to knowledge, speed, tools, and just know-how, period. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's sort of like that. I don't know if you've ever been in those sessions where you kind of ask the engineer producer, like, hey, can we do this? And he's just like fumbling, or they're just like on the screen, like, oh, like, I need another minute, or they, I just hate that lag of like somebody who has an idea, like, just get it done immediately, or wants to set up a mic and start singing as soon as the guitar player is done, like, just set it up immediately. It's just sort of that sort of immediacy that like a studio can bring to you that might be a little difficult if you did it by yourself.
Got it. Yeah. Well, speaking of like the Unconditional Arms record, Sell the Heart helped release that earlier this year. And I mean, you were speaking about it a little bit where you really played like a significant role in how that album really came together, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny that we're speaking about like what you could do. So if we did all those guitars at my house, we did them all DI, and then I took all the DIs in Newtone and reamped them by myself. You know what I mean? So all the guitar tones were me moving the mic around, me changing amps, me doing different EQs, doing different stuff. It's a lot of moving the mic too. Like I don't want people to think that you need some crazy EQ. Like anytime the tone changes, it's just me moving the mic and picking a different amp. It's very simple at the end of the day. Just sort of like taste. But yeah, and like I did that with Jeff and Ross. I know there's like a bunch of different people in the band when they play live, but those were the two main people I was dealing with. And, you know, Ross is just like a pro drummer. Like he's like one of my favorite Bay Area drummers. And every time I get to record him, it's like a treat. And yeah, it's so easy. I think he came in and tracked for like 3 hours, you know?
Really?
Yeah. We did it. We did it like one night. Like he did everything. I did, like I was saying before, I basically did like a couple drum setups in one. So like I had different options. Like there's that like YJAD song, you know, and that starts out kind of small and then gets really big. So like it starts out with like a 4 mic setup, and then as the song progresses, it goes to like a 14 mic setup, you know, sort of thing. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of stuff, but yeah, like those dudes are just so easy to work with, and Jeff is so kind and is so like trusting in my ability, where he's just like, yeah, just do whatever you want. It sounds great. And like never has too many mix notes and is just open to suggestions and ideas. And like, it's like a pleasure to work with both of them, honestly.
Yeah. I definitely speak, you know, highly of their abilities. They're Ross is a very good drummer. Jeff is like been super creative force. Like, I mean, I worked with him earlier with his band Early and Often. We released a CD, you know, for them like years ago, but I thought it was really cool when he mentioned to me that you were taking like this active role in helping to just really shape how the album came together, because I just kind of assumed that he already kind of had everything kind of laid out and the vision for it. But I was surprised, but at the end of the day, like, I just think it really did make a significant difference, because it's, I mean, obviously I'm a little biased because I helped put out the record through the label, but I just think it's a really great sounding record. So, you know, my hat's off to you for your involvement in it. So I just, you know, wanted to give you a shout out for that. But I think that's, you know, really in line with what you were talking about earlier, where you were saying, yeah, like you're wanting to take more of an active role with the bands and the artists that you work with, as opposed to just being a, you know, button pusher.
Yeah, I think like when they give me that freedom, I mean, like kind of going into COVID, like coming out of COVID, I was like, I'll only do records now where I'm given that freedom. Like that's my new sort of thing. Like I'm just sort of making that a point to be like, I gotta like be involved, because I mean, it just like sort of like the wind comes out of my sails if I'm just like sitting there pressing buttons. Like, in all honesty, like I wish I could be excited to like just sit there and record like whatever, but it's just not, it's not like what gets me excited, you know? But like when Jeff's like, here's all the DIs that we recorded, do whatever you want, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, great, now let's do this, you know what I mean?
No, I think that's rad. I mean, I always enjoy going into a studio when I can. I mean, obviously, it's been a while, and it will probably be a while between, you know, when I'm the next time I go into somebody else's studio. So I'm trying to build up my own home studio as I can. But yeah, just like every time that I've gone in, like, you know, I've managed to record at like Prairie Sun, which is like a, you know, renowned studio. You know, they've done, you know, Primus, Faith No More, you know, Tom Waits, Trail of Dead, like just tons of rad places, or tons of rad bands. And I've gone to like Shark Bite in Oakland, which was a really rad experience. Went to White Whale, which is a newer one in Santa Rosa, and each one kind of has its own kind of voice in a way, but I think a lot of that boils down to the equipment and the person kind of running the board, and understanding like how they use that equipment, and also the gear that you're using too, because unless you're bringing in your gear and you're using their gear, that can make a pretty big change. Like, if you're used to using like a Marshall JCM 800 at home, but you don't bring your amp, but all they have is like a Mesa Boogie triple rec, right? I mean, you're either going to have to adjust, or you're going to have to figure out some other kind of like way to voice it so it gets closer to the 800,
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
But I mean, but there's tricks that you can use, like, and different, especially nowadays, there's like plugins up the wazoo, and
Yeah, there's so many workarounds. I feel bad for people like trying to learn and come into this, because I feel like the price wall to get into recording and like plug-in world and things like that is so low now that you can sort of like second guess everything and kind of waste your money and buy a lot of things that do the same thing, when you just probably need one of those things and you need to master it, But I've been there plenty of times where I'm just, imposter syndrome and self-doubt is a hell of a way to get someone to buy something they don't need,
Totally.
So yeah, I know studios are a crazy thing. I think a big part of studios is just the room. I would very much not emphasize the gear side of things, if I'm being totally honest. The microphones, I think, are really important. The room is really important. Like literally, it's like good cables, good microphones, like everything working. Like put me in an awesome room with awesome microphones and give me an interface. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like the gear is totally second nature. And the way things kind of are set up now, you can like, if you wanted to do everything analog, you could just take that signal that you recorded very cleanly into a clean interface and then go somewhere and make it crazy. You know what I mean? Like even going back to the Unconditional Arms thing, is Ross came in, I set everything up. I didn't really process anything. It just went in the computer. He left. Then I ran everything through gear. Everything like went, it was like as if it was like hitting a console, basically just going through like so much stuff, but you can always do that after the fact. So I'd say it's like so much more like song and performance based, and just making sure the room is really cool and the microphones are cool and your signal's cool and your power is clean. Like just really boring things that people don't think about because they're like worried about compressors and stuff. Like just like super boring, like buy a clean power strip so there's no ground noise. Like,
right.
I feel like I'm always fighting that at Newtone. It's like this crazy power there. So we're always like, oh my God, like I got to get rid of this thing. But yeah, like just really boring stuff that people overlook. So you could do a lot of damage with plugins nowadays in like in a positive way. Like as long as you got like clean signal going in. But yeah, I don't know if gear is like the answer to everything. Amps are like a different story. I know those are voices and stuff, but recording gear is like, I don't know. I don't know if it's like the end all be all to everything.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you that basically nowadays, if you have a tight performance and you know what you want it to sound like at least you have a basic idea of what you want the end result to be like, you can go in, lay it down, and just give it a little bit of time and like a little bit of tweaks here and there, and you'll get what you want, like
yeah.
If you really want it to be crazy, like if you really want it to be like some crazy out there experimental, like proggy math, jazz fusion craziness thing, I don't even know what you'd describe it as, but I mean, that's kind of where you could just go nuts. Like you could just be like, all right, we're going to add this to this and it's going to sound weird and we're going to love it, but otherwise, if you're just like, dude, we just want to do 2 guitars, bass, drums, and some vocals, poof, boom. Keep it pretty simple, really.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to ask, with obstacles that I think a lot of bands have to face when coming to the studio, are there any in particular that you would point out as like being the ones that you see the most that bands don't kind of address accordingly before they get into the studio? Like
lyrics.
Like what are the biggest mistakes that bands make before
they don't write lyrics?
I'm sorry?
They don't write any lyrics.
Okay. Yeah.
uh, that's one. A big thing too is like, gosh, my answers are so boring, but it's like, make sure your kick drum and your bass are like matching up. Like make sure all your strums are matching up. It's like really like simple things that like when people are jamming out in the practice space, it's hard to hear, but it's just like everything being tight. Like those big bands that you think are tight, they're like not doing anything crazy other than like they're synchronized in a way that like your band's not synchronized. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like, make sure your drummer is like playing the song and not playing drums, you know, make sure like the bass player is like locked in with the kick drum, make sure everyone's strumming the same, make sure there's lyrics, like all that stuff, you know, like all that really basic, just make sure your basics are like set in stone, you know?
Yeah, no, I can totally dig that because I definitely agree that a band like say I don't know, Foo Fighters, you know, is a huge band and they have really, really technically gifted people. Like, I mean, they have like Taylor Hawkins, who's like an incredibly good drummer. And
Yeah.
then they have like Dave Grohl, who's a kick-ass drummer who also plays and writes great songs. And then you have a guy like Chris Shiflett, who's a badass on guitar. And
Total shredder.
yeah, and you know, and the rest of those guys in that band are all pros, you know, and they've been doing this for forever. And you listen to those songs and they're super clean, they're super like well thought out. And I mean, but they've done like I can't remember which record it was, but it was one that they did like not that long ago where I think they did it themselves in Dave's garage studio, I think.
Yeah, but they also hired like Butch Vig, and it was mixed by oh gosh, the guy that mixed Against Me White Crosses. I'm blanking out his name right now.
Okay, so maybe that isn't the best example then of what I was trying to get to, but
yeah,
well, it was kind of tying in with the idea that those guys are like professionals and they've been doing this a long time. So yeah, of course their album's going to sound huge and like well done, right?
yeah,
But then if you get like, and this is somebody that I've referenced a few times, you get somebody like Jay Som, you know, who's kind of one of those people that got a bit of a name for herself by, you know, putting records out like demos on like Bandcamp, and they were just really well done, like
yeah,
recordings that were very lo-fi with respect to like, you know, she didn't go to some crazy studio and spend thousands and thousands of dollars doing it. She just really worked her songs out and made them sound clean and just good. And
yeah,
I think that gets attention. Like, I mean, her songs are also like, she's a good, you know, she's a good singer songwriter. She's a good artist, but I mean, I'm biased because I happen to like her stuff, but I don't know. Yeah, I think there's a lot to the fact that you can be a really great band but have a really bad recording, and that makes a really big difference, you know, between how many people are going to listen to your stuff.
I think it does. I also, I don't know. I think it does. I think the song, it will outweigh any good recording any day. I just, you know, there's a lot of power behind like those Beatles stories of like John and Paul just like sitting and writing songs in the hotel room, and like
Sure.
that's what they would come in with, and you're just like, damn, like record that on a piece of toilet paper. I don't care. Like I'll take it. You know what I mean? Like I don't care. I do not like, even when I listen to the Beatles, like I do not care what it sounds like. Their vocals are distorted. Like it's vibey, it's cool, it's fun, but damn, like those fucking songs will get you. You know what I mean? And it's like all this new like SoundCloud rappers and lo-fi stuff. It's fucking awesome. Like people just learn how to people just figure it out. There's like no rules to any of this stuff. I think like a lot of the old studios and a lot of like old music people are just like don't know how to like interpret people that just said like there are no rules. Like you made rules and like we're not going to follow them. You know what I mean? Which is awesome. You know?
Yeah, I definitely can dig on that. Is that, you know, it's really like this wild west kind of scenario because everyone's making new plugins, like everyone's making, you know, different voicings for whatever, you know, plugin they're gonna have, or like who says you can't add like a phaser, a flanger, and a chorus like to this one part and make it and not make it sound good? Like you can totally do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's sky's the limit.
Yeah. But I also definitely agree that uh, as long as the songs are good, at the core of it, people will listen to the songs,
Totally. And I think like that's like the big thing I try to get across to people is like if your songwriting's down and you get all those like boring things I just talked about down, like we can make it more interesting. Like if you guys got all the technicality down and I'm not like, hey, there's like nothing lines up here, like nothing lines up here, like this part goes 20 times, maybe it should go 4 times, you know what I mean? Like all that stuff's out of the way. I'm like, cool, like let's put a chorus like pedal on like the snare drum and like put a like echo rec on every guitar and like put the drums in the hallway. I don't care as long as the melody is cool. Like that's all that I care about. Like let's make it interesting because like I can listen. Like I do listen to like people that are just like a normal drum setup, like a 57 on a guitar cab and like a 57 on a bass amp, and it's like that sound. Like the minute I hear that sound, I'm like, cool. Like that's cool. Like okay, first 4 bars. Like now what are we doing? You know what I mean? Not like first song. I'm like first like 10 seconds. Like okay, cool, get it. Like what are we doing in the second half of the verse?
Mm-hmm. Do you find that more people or more bands these days maybe spend too much time trying to overproduce their stuff?
I don't know. It depends. Everyone's different. I can't say that anything happens any one way or the other. Not to like not give you an answer, but some people come in really prepared and it's like, cool, like let's get crazy. And then some people don't come in prepared and we're like, I'll take what you can give me if like it's not messed up,
Okay.
Like it's just kind of all over the place. I'm been sort of changing things up where we're doing a lot more pre-production beforehand, and like Zoom meetings are really good for that. People being able to record themselves are really good for that. It's cool. Like I'm starting a record for the first time in September. Gonna kind of like do that in a different way. And they've been sort of recording themselves a little bit, and I've been like, hey, like do you see how like you can literally see on the screen here like none of these match up, like these are all the same parts, you guys are supposed to be playing the same thing, do you see how it's like all wrong, like somebody here is not correct, they're like, oh okay, I understand, like the strums need to match up or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's where I'm thinking of production. Maybe I don't know, I know a lot of people use the word production for different things, but yeah, I don't know. Sometimes people come in with demos and they're like, have so much processing on the demo. I go like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to make it sound like that. Like you have demo-itis and you're not going to get out of it. And like, I'm not going to be able to beat that. Like you put 30 plugins on your vocal and you don't even know what you did to get there. Like, dude, you gotta take what we did and like, you got to make this on your own. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, that's interesting that, you'll have so many people that are coming in and it's like they've already produced the record themselves. So
yeah.
Like, what more can you possibly add to it except for like to take away stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. Or to take away or be like, here, like I recorded the drums good. Like you can do like, here's your drum track. You know what I mean? Like put your demo vocal over it, which has been kind of cool. Like I've been incorporating that a lot. Like I do not dismiss people's GarageBand demos at all anymore. Like, if anything, I'm like, send me all the multi-tracks of that, and then let's track over this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I actually, it's funny that you mentioned that because that's something that Tsunami Bomb's doing right this moment. Like we're trying to record something and we're kind of having to do it like this piecemeal way where we're each recording in a different area. And it's going to come together. It's going to work. We're not 100% sure yet what's going to happen with it, but it's going to be something. And we have an idea of what it's going to sound like, obviously, but we've never done it this way. So it's going to be fun to see how it turns out. But, so who are some artists that you've worked with over the last few years that people may, know about?
Oh, Unconditional Arms. We already talked about them.
Mm-hmm.
Just did the new Broadway Calls record, which was really cool and fun and wild experience. We only tracked for 7 days, so and then I had 3 weeks to like make it crazy. So that was cool. Man, Man, anytime someone asks me this question, I have no idea. Decent Criminal,
Hmm.
really cool Bay Area band. Um, done some records with the Lucky Egypts, another cool Bay Area punk band. Pity Party's record just came out, cool band. Sarcasm, another cool Gilman band. Man, I'm trying to think. To look at my my band, Daydream, did my band, which is fun, sort of sometimes, besides doing vocals. Um, yeah, Western Settings, Story So Far, Direct Hit. Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
last couple years.
that's an awesome list of bands. I mean, I mean, shoot, I mean, were there any bands besides Broadway Calls that you kind of had lined up prior to the COVID, pandemic that you were supposed to work with? Or can you not talk about that or anything? Or
Yeah, well, there was a bunch. I was basically booked for like three or 4 months, and that just got like totally imploded. The last thing I did was a Decent Criminal, and I did like a 4-song little teaser thing. I'm not really sure what they're gonna do with it, but the songs are super rad. Um, we were all just like listening to the Beastie Boys book the whole time, and like so we just I don't know. There's this cool stuff on there. Like some songs go from like mono drums to like I got a Mellotron. We got a new guitar player in my band Daydream, and he's awesome. His name's Mike, and he just came over with like 2 milk crates of guitar pedals and a Mellotron and left it at my house. And so like every band's been getting like a fake orchestra like on all the bridges recently. So
wow.
like Decent Criminal got like a big Mellotron orchestra, which was fun. And trying to think of what else. I don't know. There were just bands lined up that unfortunately we had to like kind of reschedule. The September band was what I had coming up next before COVID. Before Broadway Calls, actually, I forgot to mention them. We Bless This Mess. They're this band from the UK. They were originally from Portugal. They flew over here. They had met our bass player. He was filling in for another band. And he was like, you guys should come to California. We'll have a great time. Like, book you some shows. Blah, blah, whatever. They did it. It was super fun. And yeah, it was crazy. They're really cool. They're like a great, like, the singer is just like a really inspirational, like, yogi, amazing, sweet guy that, like, when we'd wake up every morning and go get, like, vegan lattes and, like, have the best time ever with those dudes. They lived with me and my wife for, like, a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know. I'm, like, rambling now, but those guys are great. Just kind of a bunch of records before COVID, you know?
Are there any bands that you would like, I mean, I guess would you really love to work with? Like, are there any bands that like you've maybe thought about reaching out to see if you could help them like do a record sometime?
Yeah, I had like it was weird. I've done like a couple interviews where like someone's asked me this question, and I always say like my favorite band. Which now, like as I have gotten older, it's like I don't really have an answer to that because like the exciting thing is like working with this band, and then like suddenly people take interest in it, and you like are with them together. And I've realized like that's really fun to like be a part of and see and like experience. So it's not necessarily like I don't know, like doing like a established band, like maybe like a Broadway Calls type band. That's super fun to see. And like I knew a lot of people were gonna just like listen to that because they hadn't released a record in so long. But when you're also working, which is fun, it's like cool to like see all that stuff. But kind of when you would like just do a band and you're like, that was really fun. Like I don't know what's gonna happen with that. Like good luck, guys. Hard, like easy part's over. Hard part is getting people to care. Like good luck with that. You know, I don't know how to do that. You know, my band has like less than negative 1,000 plays on Spotify. So like, you know, like I have no idea how to get people to listen. But like when people start listening, you're like, that's incredible. Like you guys killed it. You know, like congratulations. And they're thankful, and I'm like just grateful to be a part of it. You know.
Totally. Well, and I think. I mean, have you had a lot of interest like since the last, stream of records that you've done like with these bands? I mean, do you get a lot more people coming at you after having done with, the record with like Unconditional Arms, Broadway Calls, Decent Criminal, Western Settings, etc.? I mean, they're all kind of in that punk rock kind of vein, you know,
Yeah.
except for Unconditional Arms. But I mean, yeah, do you get a lot of people reaching out to you nowadays?
Sometimes it kind of comes in waves, you know what I mean? Like if a record drops and people like it, I'll get people that hit me up. You know, like I work another job. Like I'm not like just full-time like studio guy. So like I was for a long time, and that was just craziness. Cause like I would just be totally lying to everyone if I said I was booked out like 365, 24/7. Like that's not the way, like that was not my reality. Like before I got another job, it was like, but you know, just scraping by to like do it all the time. So like it doesn't come around all the time. But like when it does, I'm like really grateful for it. And like, I'm really stoked to work on these bands. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like it's not all the time, but like it's, if a record drops, people enjoy it, I'll get like a wave of that. And then that kind of like settles down until the next one comes out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it'd be like a good, like every 3 months is like a sort of flux of people coming in, and then it sort of calms down for 3 months and then another flux, you know?
Got it. Are there any other producers or engineers that you tend to like kind of think about or look at as like inspirations for you?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This one was so funny. I said like the worst guy on the last interview I did, because I was just like really into his recording. I was just like, I'm curious how this guy works. And sometimes when you like obsess about somebody, it's like top of mind, but it's not what you meant to answer. But no, my favorite like mix engineer right now, I love mixing, and like all of my favorite mixing, or all my favorite like idol type people are mix engineers. So Spike Stent is my guy right now. He's amazing. Produced an Oasis record, mixed like Coldplay and Muse, and does tons of pop stuff, tons and tons of pop stuff. And then like Serban Gania is one of my favorites too. He does like all the Taylor Swift stuff and like Katy Perry and things like that. It's weird. Like I work with punk bands. Like my listening for like audio is like not based in any way, shape, or form, which is like so ironic, you know. But those guys are big for me. Obviously, there's like the big rock guys like Eric Valentine and the Lord Alges that I really enjoy too. But I'd say like right now is like Spike Stent is my guy. If anybody's ever heard of him, he just works on like big records, you know, like Fuck It Money, Oprah Money records, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I've never heard of either of those folks, and you know, I'll certainly check them out. I mean, I've always really been very fond of the stuff that like Butch Vig did, you know, and I mean, you know, he's obviously like a huge player in the world of like alternative and rock and roll, especially like 90s kind of stuff. I mean,
yeah.
You know, Smashing Pumpkins.
Have you heard of Andy Wallace?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Cause everyone, I mean, Butch Vig gets that like Nevermind credit, but I'm like, I don't know I wonder what it sounded like before Andy Wallace had it. That's like my vibe always. I'm like, that producer is pretty cool, but I wonder what it sounded like before blah, blah, blah got to mix it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is kind of interesting how, each producer or engineer kind of ends up having almost, I mean, I wouldn't call it a signature, because it's not like you can really compare like Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins and like even Against Me, you know, except for that all three of those bands have all been produced by Butch Vig, and each one of them is uniquely different, but very big sounding, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that was like one of Butch Vig's kind of signatures, was that it sounds huge, you know?
Yeah, but Butch is good at capturing that stuff. And then like, dude, when he did that Against Me record, when he did New Wave and Rich Costy's mix on that, Rich Costy just fucking killed it. Like Rich Costy is the shit. Like he's another mix engineer, just like amazing, dude. He's so good. Trying to think of other guys that are amazing. Have you ever heard of Sean Everett?
I can't say that that's ringing a bell now.
Dude, this guy, he looks like he's an alien. He looks like he's from outer space. He's like a Canadian with like bleached dreadlocks. So I don't know, like just to give it a kind of paint a picture, Alabama Shakes record, that Jenny Lewis record. Okay. Oh, dude, it's just so cool. So cool. All the like weird little 4-track stuff on the Broadway Calls record, that all the weird little like warbles and all that like stuff, total rip off of me reading like Sean Everett articles about him doing Alabama Shakes records. Like that's all that is.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'd imagine that when you're looking to try to figure out like something that you could bring to an album or a song that you're working on, that you would like tap in to the brain of like somebody else, like a Butch Vig or, whomever. And like, if they have anything that's documented to kind of talk about what it is that they did, then you could just kind of tap into that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's an unfortunate, like never ending cycle. Like it just goes on forever. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It just goes on forever. Yeah. Like I love all that stuff. And like it's funny that I work with all these punk bands, like alternative bands, or I don't know what you want to call them. I don't really think about it like that anymore, but, like, yeah, my inspiration is drawn from like total left field of that, sound wise. I mean, and I can like listen to bands. I grew up in like playing in punk bands and like being in the punk scene and like all that kind of stuff. But like my daily listening habit is like very not that like centered in that anymore. You know what I mean? But I think it helps me like bring like a new perspective to like that world that is like drums, like guitar left, guitar right, bass. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, that's boring. Like, how can we spice this up a little bit? You know?
Right. Totally. Yeah. Well, I would ask you, like, what are a few records in particular that you think are like some of like the best sounding records that you've heard? Like, I mean, I wouldn't even say like in recent years, but just period. Like some records that people should absolutely like use as a potential, like, dude, you got to listen to this, and this is what you're going for. Like, kind of. Yeah.
It's kind of weird with this question though, because like my answers would be like very big records that like I'm not trying to like flex on anybody, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like with my like musical nerdiness, you know. But like for different things, like it goes back to like the Beatles Rubber Soul is like I think fucking awesome sounding. Like I just think it's like the best, like it's just an awesome rock and roll record. You know what I mean?
Right.
The last DMA's record, this band, the DMAs, that I absolutely love. They're from Australia. They're a total like Manchester worship band. They're just fantastic. Like they released their newest record is awesome too. It's a lot more dancier and like just sort of like cosmic-y sounding, which is cool. The last one was mixed by Spike. Has the most beautiful vocal melodies. I love the way it sounds. American Idiot is like my go-to, like badass rock and roll, big ass sounding drums, big ass guitars. Like nothing's ever gonna like beat like that Jesus of Suburbia intro. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I could just go on forever. All kinds of stuff, you know.
Sure. And then
all my Spotify playlists are made off of who mixed stuff. So like I have a Spike Stent one, and he did this record for this lady called King Princess, and it was produced by Mark Ronson. So it's like the Uptown Funk guy with like my favorite mixing engineer. So it's like amazing, you know. I think all that new John Mayer stuff with Spike also just sounds awesome. So I don't know. It's not like music nerd flex on anybody, but you know.
Well, I think that's something that, I mean, I would never want to put anyone in a box and just say, oh, like if you're in a punk band, then you obviously don't listen to punk. It's like, I know that that's not the case, but like, I think that it is doing a bit of a disservice to yourself if you're only aiming for a band that you are kind of closely like to sound like, you know, like, because if you're a band who happens to sound somewhat like NoFX, right? Or you happen to sound something like Alkaline Trio or some other band, right? And you give one of their records to the engineer and say, we want to sound like this, right? Then all you're doing is trying to sound like NoFX, or you're trying to sound like Alkaline Trio. Like you're supposed to sound like yourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I you know, again, like I don't necessarily think that all bands do that, but I think that a lot of bands do, especially when they're younger and they don't really understand that, like, dude, you have the ability, like you kind of pointed to earlier, there's really no rules. like you can kind of go in there and make yourself sound as unique as you want, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And in a lot of ways, that's kind of the goal is to really be like your own band and your own voice, and, you know, kind of set yourself a little bit apart from NoFX or from Alkaline Trio or whomever it is that maybe you're already kind of feeling compared to, you know? But yeah, I don't know. I think that it would be a good idea for anyone to consider opening their options open to listening to like old Beatles records or something by, you know, the guys who did Uptown Funk or something like that, you know, just to kind of give yourself and say, we could sound this way, you know, if we really wanted to.
Yeah. I don't know. It just goes, it's just like whatever you're into, you know what I mean? And sometimes bands come in and it's just like, oh, I'm going to put my it's fun. It's like, I can be a little bit of a chameleon and be like when the Lucky Egypts come in, it's like, oh, I'm just going to be Jerry Finn right now. And we're going to take off your pants and jacket. Like, that's what we're going to do right now. You know what I mean? And I get to do that, which is like so fun. It's so fun, you know, cause I'm just like, how do we get to do that? And that you know, and in that instance, I wouldn't set up like one mono drum mic like I would for my band and like do nerdy Beatles dork shit. You know what I mean? But like, it's just fun to like wear all this. So it plays off like where I would take something, it plays off of what the band's into. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and you know, to just to kind of follow up with my last statement, it's also fine if you want to come in and record and want to sound like the last Blink-182 record, if that's what you really want. I mean, yeah, we can do that too. So yeah, it kind of ties in with the no rules thing. Like we can do whatever the way you want it to do. But so yeah, hey, you know, so you live in the Bay, and you know, something that I ask everyone that comes on the show is, you know, are there any bands, either, I mean, they don't have to necessarily be from the Bay Area, but I try to keep it locally to where you're from, that people may not be aware of that you think they should maybe give an opportunity and listen to them?
There's this band called Point of View that I think everyone needs to check out.
Point of View? Okay.
Point of View. They're on Creator Destructor, like Ben's label.
Yeah.
Dude, it's two twin brothers playing drums and guitar, and then their like friend Bragg. They've all been friends since they were like 12 years old, and it just sounds like a band where like you have played together since you were 12 years old, but like nobody's like, so they're like the best band ever. They're like tight, like, you know, they like speak to each other through music, and it's just like the best harmonies. Like, it's so good. Like, both the brothers sing, and yeah, that's like one of my favorite Bay Area bands. It was, I asked for the questions that you sent because I was like, I want to like think about this for a minute, like let it stew. And like me and my wife were just like listening to Point of View, and I was like, dude, I gotta say Point of View for that question. Like, they're the shit, you know?
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, they're one of my favorite Bay Area bands. And I think they're going to start back up again. They kind of chilled out for a couple of years, but I think they're coming back.
Cool. Yeah, anyone else you can kind of throw out?
I would just, you know, all the, I mean, I'm based in the Bay Area, so all the bands I'm working with are Bay Area bands. So, you know, all the bands I said, like, everyone is great. And like, I don't know, like, I think they're all just like really hardworking bands. Like, they come to me and they work really hard and they want it to sound awesome. You know, like, I take what I do really seriously, and I know the bands that are coming to me aren't like looking for like a throwaway weekend to record a few songs. Right. So like all the bands that I had mentioned before, like Pity Party, Sarcasm, like Decent Criminal, the Lucky Egypts, like Unconditional Arms, like all these bands that I've worked with, like they all work. So they, I mean, like they're all going on tour. They're all touring bands. Like they're all working their ass off. Like touring now is like the hardest. It's so fucking hard for bands. You know what I mean? Like it's so hard. So like all the bands I worked with that are like from the Bay Area, like I respect the hell out of all of them.
No, I definitely agree. Like Decent Criminal, Unconditional Arms, Lucky Egypts, Pity Party, Sarcasm. Those are all great bands. Absolutely. So not a bad list whatsoever. But yeah. And then, you know, my last question is, and I know it's like a ridiculously loaded question, but I try to throw it out there, is if you could name 5 albums that are kind of like your quintessential 5, you know, you'd listen to the rest of your life on a desert island, what would they be?
Tom Petty, Wildflowers.
All right.
Do American Idiot, Green Day.
Mm-hmm.
Third Eye Blind, Out of the Vein.
Okay.
Oasis, Be Here Now. I know it's like not the Oasis record everyone likes, but that's my fucking favorite one.
Okay.
How many did I just say?
That's 4. You got Tom Petty, Third Eye Blind, American Idiot by Green Day, and Oasis.
Oh yeah, and then we'll do Beatles, Rubber Soul.
Rubber Soul. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, those are pretty classic albums. I mean, a lot of people know who those records, and they're pretty universally loved. So
again, I'm not a music nerd. I'm just I'm like, damn, like that cost $1 million, and it sounds like it did. This sounds really good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, dude. Dude. I mean, Tom Petty, as far as I'm concerned, could do no wrong. You know, I mean, I miss that motherfucker.
It's kind of weird. I was like wondering if there was going to be questions like that, because I'm always like the worst at coming up on the spot with that. So that list was totally pre thought out. But I just like was thinking about it like as I was stewing on like what an answer might be, and like I don't have like an eclectic music taste. Like I'm a binge listener, so like I listened to Wildflowers for like 2 months, like during quarantine, like every day. Like that would be like my run record, and I'd go for a run for the whole entirety of the album, and I'm like, cool, like I listened to music today. That was like my time to do that, you know?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same way. Like I'll kind of obsess about a record for a while, and I'll just listen to that one, or like a handful of records, and those will be the records that I'm just currently in rotation, you know?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm not an engineer, and I'm not really I wouldn't consider myself to be a producer, because I've never really done those things. But I try to think about music, I think, in those ways, by like really just dissecting them and like figuring out like how the hell did they do that, or like oh, I didn't expect that sound, or like you're, because I mean, if you really, depending on the way that you listen to music, like if you're doing like over ears or like in ears or like your speakers at home, you end up like picking up on different things and like little subtleties, and like all of a sudden like you'll discover something that's like, oh dude, I never heard that before. And like, especially if you're listening to it over and over, because then you already kind of know what the whole sounds like, but then you can pay a little bit more attention to the smaller details.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel that on every level.
Yeah.
My high school years were like every Against Me album, like every day for like 4 years. I mean, that was it. Like, it wasn't like I listened to bands or music. I was like, I listened to Against Me. You know what I mean?
Got it. Yeah. I mean, for me, like when I was younger, it was all about Smashing Pumpkins and Fugazi. Like those were like the two, you know. And if you had to do a third, it'd probably be Primus. You know, like those were the three that like pretty much revolving door for me. You know?
Yeah. I had Strike Anywhere in there for a few years too. It was like Against Me, Strike Anywhere. We're just tearing down the system, you know.
And you know, hey, like, you know, we'll end the show with a song from actually your own band, Daydream, right?
Daydream, yeah.
Yeah. What you want to mention a little bit about that band real quick?
Yeah. So it's like a band with like my high school buddies, Kyle and Travis. Then we got another guitar player, Mike, and we were like playing like punk rock music, and then we sort of released a new EP that's just like really mellow, beachy, chill, like Oasis, Beatle inspired. Like if Oasis and the Beatles like surfed, that's what I would describe our band as.
Killer. So
yeah.
Well, hell, man, it's been really nice to talk to you, and you know, I'm glad you're doing okay, staying safe, and
yeah, you as well.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get to see you in real life soon again at a show, or you know, maybe I mean, I'd love to work with you at some point too.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. All right, Andy. Well, thank you so much for thinking of me to be on, and take care.
Yep, take care.
Can't be trying. Now I'm growing old and dying. Find a little piece of something good, find a little bit of me and you. I guess you always had me there. I've been driving around with my windows down, feel the quiet weight of the city now. Is this really where you're supposed to be? And you ask yourself, is this the only way? You're still thinking about tomorrow, honey. I'm still lost in today. If I'm trying to believe in something, I guess I'll just say your name. This whole place is not the same. 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 I've been way too gone for far too long. Feel the distance heavy in my lungs.